In a cemetery called Morningside, a young boy, Mike, races between the gravestones on a motorbike. He's searching for answers about death. Both his mother and father are dead, and his older brother Jody is not hanging around to look after him. He arrives in the rain just in time to witness a tall man exhuming a coffin and effortlessly placing it in his hearse. This is his and our introduction to the world of the tall man, and Mike's life will never be the same again. Hello and welcome back to the 5 Minute Film Club. You won't be seeing me in this video. I know it's been a while, but this past week I've raced through the world of Don Coscarelli's 1979 chiller Phantasm and all of its sequels spanning nearly 40 years, and I've really fallen in love with them, and I just had to put my thoughts in a video and get it out to you. Phantasm is one of those films that has followed me like the chrome spheres in the film. The VHS box art for parts 2 and 3 were a regular feature at my beloved video rental places as a child. I remember catching a bit of part 2. I didn't know which one it was at the time, but since watching them this week I've worked out it is the second film, and that night I saw the weird zombie dwarfs and the creature that grows out of one of the characters' back, and I just remember turning it off pretty sharpish, but kids were talking about it in the playground the next day, that they'd seen a snippet of this film called Phantasm, and viewers of my channel will know that body horror is something I have a slight aversion to, but the image of Angus Scrimm on that box art was always something that fascinated me. So a couple of years ago I got the box set from Arrow Video and finally got round to watching it from the beginning, and I was just struck by how different the film was from what I was expecting. I was expecting a rather low-budget, slocky affair, to be honest, with not much going on, but I was very pleasantly surprised to find a film that was more akin to David Lynch and Dario Argento, both in tone, theme, and also music. Even though this is a film that has its fair share of gore, its main interest is in working through the mind of a young teenage boy and exploring his fears and nightmares. I feel like the Phantasm films have never really hit the same cultural awareness like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers. I suppose they just haven't had the box office might, but having now sat and watched all of them, please don't let that put you off. Phantasm was Don Coscarelli's third feature, amazingly, even though he was really young. I think he made his first film when he was about 17 or 18. And even though he had no real affinity with horror, he knew that, what with it being the late 1970s, horror was a good genre to try and gain mainstream attention. So he rented a cabin in the mountains and isolated himself away to begin writing the screenplay. He dreamt one night of being pursued by a sphere, a shiny silver sphere with spikes, and being pursued by a very tall man who he knew would hurt him when he finally caught up with him. This kernel of an idea is pretty much the story of Phantasm. It's a difficult film for anybody to really pin down story-wise, as it's based on dream logic. Scenes shift in and out of focus as almost little vignettes as Mike, played by A. Michael Baldwin, is pursued by the tall man, played by Angus Scrimm. Essentially, he and his brother Jody, and Jody's ice cream vendor friend Reggie Bannister, played by Reggie Bannister, stumble upon the alien tall man who is apparently stealing corpses to turn them into his zombie dwarf slaves and then send them back to his home world. But the whys and wherefores are not unpacked. The original running time of Phantasm was reportedly 3 hours, and Coscarelli sliced it down to around 90 minutes in order to make it more commercial. I think actually that having less is much more powerful for a film like Phantasm. I love films that, as a viewer, we almost stumble into without much explanation and just exist in the world of the film for a while before getting chucked out again. It's why I love the films of David Lynch, and Phantasm really does happily sit alongside his work as an exercise in trying to elicit an uncomfortable sense of dread from their viewers. Also, piecing David Lynch's career, filmography, and the Phantasm series is a really fun affair, and I definitely think I'm going to do a video on that in the future. There are so many standout, visually powerful moments that keep flashing back to me, including the scene where Mike sees the tall man walking across the street in slow motion and then stops and stares at him, unbeknownst to everybody around them. There are moments as well that feel more overtly horror, like the spheres in the mortuary and Angus Scrimm's brilliant line readings of things like,
"The funeral is about to begin, sir."
Okay. Sir.
and of course the ever-quotable, I just love it. I love the music as well. I can hear things like John Carpenter, and definitely his theme for The Fog and Escape from New York. I'm on the hunt for a copy on vinyl, for sure. Also, I was struck by the legacy of this film when watching it. When it came out, it really was a slow burn affair. It, like most horror films in the 1970s, early 80s, it really was a word-of-mouth event. And slowly it picked up some really good reviews, and it became a cult hit, and enough to allow Don Coscarelli to make another film, which was really all it was designed to do. But watching this film now and looking at horror that came after it, I can only imagine that someone like Wes Craven saw a copy of this film before sitting down to write A Nightmare on Elm Street. Not only are the endings exceptionally similar, but the special effects, the yellow blood that a tall man has and they share with Freddy Krueger. Wes Craven takes a different route, building a dream element actually in as a plot device for the horror, whereas Phantasm's reality lines are so hard to unpick, it makes it very difficult to navigate sometimes, which I think is possibly a reason why it hasn't hit the mainstream even 40, nearly 50 years later. However, it is no less rewarding. It just requires an open mind, and once you get on its wavelength, it opens up a whole new world of terrifying delights. I really would heartily recommend giving Phantasm a go, and also its sequels a watch. They vary in quality massively, but once you've finished them, you do get a great sense that you are part of something quite special. You're part of this group of people that have come to these films in various different ways in the past nearly 50 years. I found myself really attached to all the actors, and the fact that they keep coming back with lower and lower budgets and just keep making these films for the fans, for themselves, just to continue exploring the story that they set up in this film. It really is fascinating, and they don't ever try and nail down the specifics of what these films are about, which just makes them much more rewatchable. These definitely don't have a linear beginning, middle and end, and particularly when you take the whole of the 5 film stories as one long story, I mean, I don't know where the beginning is, and I'm not sure where the end is, or whether we've even got there yet. If you would like me to tackle any of the sequels, please let me know in the comments down below. But for now, I will just say thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.